Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. We welcome you here in the sanctuary and those of you who are joining us online. And for those joining us this morning in person, please remember to turn off your phones or other devices. My name is Tim Versteeg. I am the religious educator and my pronouns are he, him. I will be your service leader this morning. And we thank the many people who are co-creating our service experience this morning, our music ministers, who you just heard from, music director Rachel Derry, and our choir led by choir director Cindy Carey. Our speaker today is Dan Tapley, behind me. Our worship assistants are Audrey Johnman and Susan Johnston. That's going to be hard to do, Johnman and Johnston. You guys are going to like a law firm or something. Our ushers today are Jean Jacobs and Elizabeth Beckett, and our tech team is Brian Carey, Chase Tapley, and John Elliott. As always, in our multi-generational services, of which this is one, our CYRE activity cart is available at the front to borrow items to keep hands and minds active during the service. And our nursery is also always open for children under 5, as it is every Sunday, and today's volunteers are Barb Wallace and Ginny Megan, who are at the back until they see the need to go back if there is one. A vital part of our lives together and our ministries to each other and the world is the sharing of news of our community. This morning we have these announcements to share. On January 14th at noon, there will be a budget information meeting. The congregation will receive extensive information about the 2024 budget approved by the Board of Directors. Questions will be welcome both in the church and online. Snacks will be provided. However, there is also a potluck for newcomers and families in Fellowship Hall next week on Sunday, January 14th. It's happening in Fellowship Hall right after the service. This is hosted by the Volunteer and Congregant Engagement Group. Again, it is for families, and I think the definition of family is pretty loose. So if you want to come for a potluck next Sunday in the Fellowship Hall. Those are all our announcements. If you want to know more about the life of this church, please check our website or our all-church email, which goes out on Thursdays. Our chalice represents the light of hope at the center of our faith tradition, and the spark of this flame draws us into our time of worship and community. Today, we light our chalices to represent the intersecting circles in our community of communities. Our sanctuary chalice, for those gathered here in person, our children's chalice, to mark the presence of our children and youth with us today, and our music chalice, to recognize the gift of our choir, who are sharing their gifts with us today, and a final chalice for those who are joining us online. So please join me in reading the chalice words now shared on the screen with us. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. The city of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, we are a city of 570,000 people, among whom are 17,000 citizens with Indigenous ancestry from across Turtle Island. The effect of settler colonialism is not a static entry in the history book. It is present in our life today. The responsibility of people with settler ancestry who continue to benefit from the land and its resources is to face the truth of our collective pasts and work for equity and justice in our present world. Only through truth can we hope to reach reconciliation.
Our call to worship words this morning are I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be gay in such jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or pensive mood, they flash upon the inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then in my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. Stand as you are willing and able for hymn number 1067 in the hymn book, on the screen behind you, for Mother Earth, Beloved Garden.
Our story for all ages this morning is Sky Color by Peter H. Reynolds. Marisol was an artist. She loved to draw and paint, and she even had her very own art gallery. Not all her art hung in a gallery. Much of it she shared with the world. She painted posters to share ideas she believed in. At school, Marisol was famous for her creative clothes, her box of art supplies, and her belief that everybody was an artist. Yes, Marisol was an artist through and through. So when her teacher told the class they were going to paint a mural for the library, Marisol couldn't wait to begin. The classroom buzzed with the sound of brainstorming. The students talked and sketched. Together they made a great big drawing. Then they marched to the library. "I'll paint a fish. I'll paint one too. I'll paint the ocean." Marisol shouted, "I'll paint the sky." Marisol rummaged through the box, but she could not find any blue. How am I going to paint the sky without blue paint? The bell rang. It was time to put their brushes down for the day, and as she climbed aboard the bus, Marisol kept wondering. All the way home, she stared out the window. The sun lowered close to the horizon. Later at home, Marisol watched day turn into night. And that night, Marisol settled into a deep dream. She drifted through a sky swirling with colors, the colors mixed, making too many to count. And in the morning, Marisol stood waiting for the bus in the rain. The sky was not blue. She smiled. At school, Marisol raced to the library. She grabbed a dish and began adding colors, this one, that one. She swirled the brush to make an altogether new color. Marisol then began painting on the wall. A boy asked, "What color is that?" "That," Marisol said, "that is sky color." And that is the end of our story. I'm going to share a brief passage here from a collection by Reverend Tom Owen Toll, who is a UU theologian. And it's from a book called Wake Up, Daily Lessons for a More Liberated and Loving Life. He begins with an epigram from Pablo Picasso. "When I haven't any blue, I use red." Often we find ourselves stuck in a dither of self-pity because we don't have at our disposal a certain color or particular possibility. When we don't have blue, instead of halting operations, Picasso encourages us to use the other available options: red, green, yellow, lavender, and more. A monochromatic life is enervating. We need to utilize with confidence a wide range of existing resources. What we have on hand invariably proves more interesting than we could ever imagine. Ours can be an exquisitely colorful world if we would employ our multi-hued palette. So today, in the spirit of a multi-generational worship, I have set up a table at the back with a number of markers, and I invite you to explore your colorful palette, multi-hued palette. There's a few things you might want to think about today. We have our lovely choir with us here today. You might want to draw the music in whatever colors you want. You might want to draw the earth or sea or sky, but in the proverbial red that Picasso speaks of. Or you might want to just draw how you're feeling this morning. So there are large sheets back on the table there and a million markers, and up on the cart here, there's smaller sheets with clipboards if you'd rather do it at your seat. But I encourage you to take a moment and express yourself artistically this morning during the service.
In these moments of contemplation, I invite you to relax, close your eyes if you like, and breathe deeply. Following our reading, there will be a few moments of silence, followed by music. During the music, you are welcome to come up and light a candle for a joy or concern. This morning's reading is No Songs in Winter by Thomas Bailey Aldrich. The sky is gray as gray may be. There is no bird upon the bough. There is no leaf on vine or tree. In the Neponset marshes now, willow stems, rosy in the wind, shiver with hidden scents of snow. So too it is winter in my mind. No light-winged fancy comes and stays, a season churlish and unkind, Slow creep the hours, slow creep the days, the black ink crusts upon the pen. Just wait till bluebirds, wrens, and jays, and golden orioles come again.
And we just have one joy to share this morning, and this comes from Paul Hawkins. In 2008, Roy and I started a potluck series called Getting to Know You, and we invited members alphabetically, and at some point it was discontinued. I am bringing these back once again and starting at the end of the alphabet because I don't remember where we left off. So Paul asks that if you receive an invitation, you consider it a good opportunity to get to know some of your fellow congregants at a deeper level, and I'm sure we all look forward to getting those invitations from Paul as he progresses with this project. Our offering that we accept each Sunday is an opportunity to recommit ourselves to this community and to our relationship with each other. When we give, we say yes to something that we value, and with gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. If you're joining us online this morning and would like to make a donation to the life of the church, there's a button on the home page of our website which allows you to do so. Thank you for your gifts in support of the ministries of our church.
Before I begin, I just wanted to thank everyone that's been involved today. It's kind of neat to hear My Blue Boat Home during the contemplation music. That's one of my favorite songs to hear in church, and it wasn't planned, at least not by me, and it just happened. So I want to just say thanks to the powers that be that made that happen. My talk today is about coexisting with nature. Because of that, I want to dedicate it to my paternal grandmother, Shirley Snyder Tapley McKim. She instilled two loves in me, a love of reading and a love of nature. I want to start off by telling you about the principles of Leave No Trace, and it's a framework for how we can be in nature without harming the environment in a negative way. Now, for this church, it's going to sound somewhat familiar because when I tell you the Leave No Trace principles, there's 7. And I learned a really good technique in terms of visually seeing it, so I'm going to do my best to recreate that here. And so the first principle, if you have your finger up, it's number 1. It's to make a plan, so you're going to write down with a pen. So number 1 is your pen. Reason for that is if you don't make a good plan and you go out in nature and you end up in trouble, probably the people coming to help you are not necessarily going to be too worried about Leave No Trace when they go to kind of drag you out. Number 2 is to walk on durable surfaces. So that's where if you see a trail and all of a sudden you see something that kind of branches off a little bit, that's what we call a social trail. And that's where people have not necessarily followed Leave No Trace to stay on the main trail. 3, it's pack out waste. Kind of makes the shovel, so it's to bring your waste out with you. It's also the W. Number 4 is to take your thumb and your finger, and you're going to take pictures and leave only footprints. Number 5 is for fire. And when you have fires, you should be respectful to make sure they're not going to spread and you're not going to have a trace, because if you end up having that fire spread and turn into a forest fire, definitely you've left a trace. Number 6 is 3 fingers on each hand and their antlers. So it's to respect nature. Number 7 is to respect other people on the trail. And the way we do that is the peace symbol and a friendly wave. Now, I would argue there's a missing 8th principle, and it's not to make fun of our own principles. It's what I think should be in there as well. And it's that nature, it doesn't say anywhere in there that nature is not allowed to leave its mark on your soul. So let nature leave its mark, but hopefully not a physical one. And with that in mind, I figured the hand symbol would be bear claws. Now, one thing you'll notice, there's no pictures up on the wall today to share. Unfortunately, you're kind of stuck looking at me. And the reason for that is I'm hoping that I can paint a well enough picture with the stories that I'm sharing that you can picture them in your mind and you won't need the pictures. And really, to be honest, I don't really have a whole lot of pictures from these stories. They all exist up here. So the first story that I want to tell you, it kind of occurs in a place that you don't normally expect to see nature, but it's actually in my own neighborhood. So typically every morning I get up and I'll go for a walk. And when he was younger and he could join me on the longer walks, because greyhounds are typically lazy, our greyhound Max would join me. And in our neighborhood, there is a ton of bunnies. We see them almost every day. And you'd think that's a greyhound's dream. There's bunnies everywhere. But Max is not your typical greyhound. He sees a bunny and just keeps on walking by. He's got a very low prey drive. So there's a reason he got fired from racing after 4 races. I think he's got a better life now, but that's just me. New neighborhood rabbits, when they see Max coming, they scurry off well ahead of him getting there. The old bunnies, they tend to stick around because they know he's not going to do anything. And one morning we were walking, and we got really close to a bunny. Like I'm saying, Max could have just went like this and grabbed it. And that bunny looked at Max and went, and Max did the same thing back. They just nodded to each other. And all I could think at the time is I'm in a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's the one where the sheepdog is working and the coyote's trying to chase and grab the sheep. But every morning they clock in and they always say good morning to each other. A more recent coyote experience occurred in Brant Park last May. Our scout group was going to enjoy a paddling adventure down the Grand River and go from Paris to Brant Park. Some of the older youth added the challenge to the hike, or to the adventure, that they're going to hike from Brant Park in Brantford to Paris and then paddle back. Early Saturday morning, as I slept in my tent, I awoke to something outside. And I just listened, and I could hear it sniffing. And we'd been warned there's a coyote den in the area, and I quickly made the assertion that it was actually a coyote, just seeing if I was appetizing or not. So I just laid in my tent, and I listened as it wandered around, looking for what it could forage, and then decided there was nothing there, and it left. It was the quiet of camp and me. One Halloween, our cub pack held a camp out at a nearby scout camp. The youth and most of the scouters were set up in a lodge where it was nice and warm, but due to space concerns, I chose to set up my tent beside the lodge and stay outside. At 11, as the quiet set in, I could hear the coyotes howling in the distance, the odd leaf falling and hitting my tent, and an owl hooting in the tree behind me. Once again, it was just me there, just listening to nature and kind of just lost in how awesome it was. One year when I took Chase and his friend to Algonquin Park for a camping trip, we ran into a couple of moose along Highway 60 at the west entrance. There was a crowd of people out at the side of the highway, even though you're not supposed to stop, and they were all doing the same thing, watching in awe of the moose as they kind of walked around, got a drink from the pond, and just kind of looked at us once in a while. It was the first time the kids and I had seen a moose, and we talked about it for some time as we traveled down Highway 60 towards our site at the East Gate. When we arrived and checked in, the young lady asked us if we'd come in the East Gate, as there's people there treated to seeing a black bear. And I told her no, but we'd seen the moose that they'd set up at the West Gate. Funnily enough, in all my camping experience in bear country, I have never seen a bear beyond their scat. It may sound weird, but that's one experience I'd love to have, but of course from a distance, because I don't want to have the mark left on me other than up here. On a hiking trek in BC, Chase and I were on a trail, checking out all kinds of slugs and plants, and I happened to bend down to retie my shoe when I heard something overhead. It was quiet, but it sounded like something large. That's the day that I learned just how big the wingspan of a bald eagle is. As it soared overhead at treetop level, and I simply said to Chase, "Did you see that?" And he just responded with a very quiet, reflective nod. Once I was in the middle of the woods with Max, and we had kind of a similar occurrence, and it was a hawk this time that had suddenly swooped down about 6 feet off the ground, but 10 feet in front of us. And both the dog and I had the same reaction. It was to swivel our heads in the arc of the hawk. And then we just both kind of looked at each other and just stood there for a moment in reflection and then carried on. At least I assume the dog was reflecting, I was. In 2022, we traveled on a bucket list camping trip along Lake Superior. Several years before that, I'd won a camping hammock, but I'd always lacked the confidence to try it. And I figured, well, we're going up to Lake Superior. I've never been there either, so we might as well throw caution to the wind and try it out. It was one of the best sleeps I had for one night. More on that in a second. I woke up in the morning to find a bird perched on the edge of the hammock. And it's looking at me, wondering what was going on, and I'm looking at it, wondering, okay, what's going to happen here? And all of a sudden it realized I was looking at it, and it fluttered off. Now, I said that was the best night of sleep for one night. That's because the following night, Chase wanted to give it a try. For the remainder of the trip, I didn't get the chance to have the hammock back. Now, being that it was a free hammock, it lacked some of the amenities that some more expensive camping hammocks have, like a rain fly and a bug net and everything, so it was just wide open, which is why the bird was able to perch on top the first night. On our last night, we knew that there was some weather that could potentially be coming in. I tried to convince Chase to come inside the tent, and he's like, no, I'm going to stay in the hammock. So we set up a tarp. And in the middle of the night in Sleeping Giant Provincial Park, we learned exactly why Thunder Bay, which is nearby, is named the way it is. So a thunderstorm rolled in, and one crack of thunder was followed by echo upon echo of thunder. It was like a Foley artist was holding a sheet of aluminum and waving it to make the thunder noise nonstop. It also included a nice torrential downpour. Now I sat in my tent thinking, my kid's out there in a hammock covered by a tarp. And it didn't really enter my mind that really a tent is just two tarps with a rain fly in the tent, but whatever. I had the extra protection, I guess. So I waited nervously for the storm to let up, listening in awe of the noise, the light from the lightning, and the sound of the rain. And when it finally lit up, I got out of my tent and I crept over to the hammock, and here's Chase, sound asleep in the hammock, swaying in the breeze, the only casualty being his one now soaked hiking shoe that had fallen out from under the tarp. Now, not all these stories leave no trace principles, where it's just us and nature. Of course, we try to practice it at all times, but it doesn't mean that everyone around us is like-minded. On a camping trip in Killarney with Chase and his friend, we were awoken in the wee hours of the morning to a man letting out a low scream, sounding something along the lines of, "Ugh!" Well, years of being a scouter roused me to alertness right away to make sure the boys were okay. I listened as the campsite across the way struggled with dogs barking, people yelling, scurrying about, and finally, about an hour later, when the quiet returned, we heard a haunting voice from a few campsites down the road say, "I guess you learned not to keep food in your tent." So, after a few years of me taking Chase and his friend camping, his friend's dad, my friend, opted to join us. He was an avid fisher person, so he brought his fishing kayak to try his luck in the waters. He used a two-wheeled cart to transport the kayak down to the lake, and then parked it near my tent after he'd cleaned it and brought it back up from the lake when he was done. So again, in the wee hours of the morning, I heard a loud thunk. Instantly, I was alert, but it was quiet again. And a second later, I heard another thunk, and then some chattering. And I was finally able to count them without seeing them, just by hearing them. It was 2 raccoons that were checking out the kayak. Obviously, there was still a remnant of a fish smell on it that they found, and they were checking it out. So that's what logic tells me. My silly brain says they were having fun, because for the next 20 minutes, all I heard was them chatter, thunk, chatter, thunk. And they just had fun having a rousing game of teeter-totter, running to and fro. And then finally they gave up and went home, I'm assuming. Now, not all of nature's marks are from recent years. I recall in my college co-op near Pembroke, Ontario in my early 20s. I rented a room in Deep River, and there was a short hike from the house down to the river. And in the middle of winter, the ice would get thick enough that you could walk out on top of the ice. And I walked out far enough on the ice that suddenly I realized that I could see the water flowing underneath because it was so clear, and I could hear it. And so I just stood there for a moment, and I could see where the wind had etched grooves in the ice, and it was just an amazing feeling to be there, basically between Ontario and Quebec, and looking at all this and still have the river flowing underneath me while I was walking on it. You could also hear the ice mass creaking and cracking, and it was just amazing. Now, this might seem like a very odd talk to start off the year, and this is where I kind of want to focus it a little bit. For many years, I struggled with anxiety, and I'm going to go off script because I'm going to think that a lot of people are thinking, well, why is the guy with anxiety up here? But I found this very easy to write and very easy to talk about. I was very at ease because over the years, when my anxiety would be kind of overwhelming, I would go to these stories for my grounding points and bring me back into the present. The only pictures I really have, like I said, are in my brain. And they were the rare times that I lived totally in the moment. My anxiety didn't have a hold on me where it was saying, oh, you got to think about the 9 or 10 tasks you got to do in the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next year. My only thought was on the awe or the humor of the moment. So when my anxiety now tries to rear its head, then I go back to these stories, I think about them, I think about the humor, or I think about the awe, and that brings me back to my moment, and I can kind of get decreased and back into working on what I needed to work on. And I know being out in nature is not for everyone, but it's been a great way for me to ground myself. As we travel into 2024, I know we like to leave the baggage of the previous year behind us, but don't be afraid to bring some of those traces along to ground you. They may just help you move forward. I wish you a very happy New Year.
Stand as you're willing and able for hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. May you be changed by Emily Richards. May you leave this time together changed. May the promises you have made to yourself about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed, and transforming together, becoming our better selves. Please remain and enjoy the postlude.